The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
3 designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
I'm Ananda Gunaratna.
I'm Charlie McCarran.
And I'm Trevor Muller-Hagel.
And today we're going to be talking about Scotland Yard, the first game in our Hidden Movement series.
Ooh.
So, in Scotland Yard, it's a one versus many game. One player is Mr. X, who is a criminal of some unspecified sort. Maybe it's murder, maybe it's bank fraud, who knows. But the
Jaywalking.
The game takes place in London, and the rest of the players are detectives moving around on the board trying to catch Mr. X. But as this is a hidden movement game, they don't actually know where Mr. X is, except at certain points during the game. So every turn, Mr. X makes a move secretly by writing down the number of a space on the board. The board is basically a big graph with a bunch of nodes connected by different types of transportation. There's taxis, which are generally connecting nodes very close together, buses, which might connect nodes a little bit further apart, and then there's the underground, which connects nodes very far apart, so you can travel very fast on the underground. But Mr. X will choose a type of transportation and secretly write down where he's going. And then everybody knows what type of transportation he used because of the corresponding ticket that he has to discard, but they don't know where he went. And they probably don't know where he started either. So it's just a tiny bit of information. And then the detectives all move using the same system, except that their moves are public. So they'll say, I'm going by taxi and I'm moving from here to here, and then they move their piece on the board. And so Mr. X knows where they are, but they don't know where Mr. X is. And then the detectives give their tickets to Mr. X, so he basically ends up with an inexhaustible supply of tickets, whereas the detectives eventually run out of certain forms of transportation and can't use them anymore. And at a few points during the game, I believe it's 4 different points, Mr. X has to reveal his current location on the board, which helps the detectives narrow in on where he is. And I think that's pretty much the game. There's not that much else. Basically, find Mr. X, and Mr. X wins if the detectives can't find him by the end.
And you basically just find him by stepping on him.
Right, yeah.
That's the only way. You can't, search for him or do any other actions. It's literally you move into him, and then you find him.
Yep, if you move on to the same spot as Mr. X, you win.
Good job.
Mm-hmm. All the detectives win. They're all on a team.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely feels like an early hidden movement game. It probably was one of the first, I would imagine.
If not the first, yeah.
If not the first. And yeah, it's kind of nice in its simplicity of there's not anything really special action-wise. Aside from Mr. X has these double movement turns.
Right.
Or secret movement.
And then
beyond,
double turn.
That's
Yeah.
Extra secret movement where you don't know if they took the subway or the bus.
Or swam through the river.
Yeah,
swam through the river.
Mr. X has the ability to swim in the river.
Yep.
Which is great. I never got to use it. I wanted to so bad at starting. I was Mr. X to start the second time we played, and I really wanted to go in the river, but got scared out of there and ran around the whole map. It was great.
So yeah, what do you think this as the kickoff to our hidden movement series? What are your feelings being the hidden mover and the people trying to find that hidden mover?
I mean, it's sort of a similar appeal to hide and seek, right? But also just it's fun to know things that other people don't know.
Oh yeah.
Now, in neither of our games, we played twice. I was a detective both times, but based on my experience in other hidden movement games, being the one who's moving in secret feels great because it's like, I know where I am, but you don't know. And, it's just, yeah. So that alone is a pretty great feeling that's kind of unique to hidden movement games, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess some other games have fog of war, like Stratego, right? But it doesn't feel quite the same somehow.
And I feel like with a game like that, you're also dealing with more information too, right? Because you have multiple units. It's not one person. And so all of your investment is in this secret character who's moving across the board. And so when you see them getting close to you too, it raises your anxiety. It raises like, oh man, am I going to be able to get through this? And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges is finding a way to denote movement in these games. Now, Scotland Yard just has you write down where you're moving.
Yeah. And
that works quite well. I know that a lot of, some games try to have, one system they have is like having different cards corresponding to different locations.
Yeah.
And you play the cards on a board. Like, I think Fury of Dracula does that, if I'm remembering correct. Which feels a little clunky compared to just writing down where you're going.
Yeah, I actually, between that and the screen showing or hiding your eyes, which is just a hat that has Mr. X on it, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Literally a baseball cap.
Just a baseball cap that you put over your eyes.
There's a space in the box for it and everything.
Yeah, it's actually a component.
Yep.
But yeah, it's very helpful to like have those simple tools that you're not fiddling with something or like having a lot of other things going on. I write it down. I'm hiding my face, and I have all these tokens as they build up over the time.
Yeah.
So you ultimately end up with a million options. And I think I realized after we wrapped up that the reason that you're feeding me your tokens is just mostly for the beginning, so that when I have my limited bust or my limited underground, I can't just zip through the entire city instantly, and you can never catch me because I'm always a step ahead of you in the long run. Mm-hmm. So I think that's partly that. So I just can't do that unlimited times. But that's the only thing I really saw for having you give the criminal those things, Mr. X.
Yeah, that mechanic is kind of interesting because it sort of implies that you could starve Mr. X of a certain type of token.
Yeah.
But
never use the underground, I guess, and then he can't use the underground.
Right.
And
that seems like the most doable option.
Yeah.
But it's still like Mr. X starts with 3 underground tokens.
Right.
If he gets away from you, are you going to not use the underground to catch up with him just to deprive him of that?
Right.
Well, and as Trevor learned, actually sometimes it's better to just use the regular taxi because there's so many more branches. And that's what I found kind of interesting about the movement system, where it's like, well, the underground seems like, oh, this is the best move because you get way the heck off on another part of the map. But as soon as you reveal that you used an underground, then we can figure out, we can narrow down a little better.
Okay, you went 2 places that time.
Yeah.
We know because we're on that other underground.
Yeah, you must have started at this spot. So then, and we can kind of cut you off at those spots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's having those little pop-up moments where I reveal, or the Mr. X reveals, I'm not a criminal. I swear, I don't identify with a criminal. It's not me. Okay. Mr. X reveals himself or themselves. And having those moments of, okay, I know this is coming up. That's very exciting. How do I time that correctly so I'm not trapped somewhere when I'm revealed and then everyone can just swarm to me and block me in? Mm-hmm. So there's actually strategy to it, which I did not think there would be that much. Mm-hmm. But all the different movements, even like it's mostly reliable that taxis can go where a bus will be going, or like, they'll go in the same direction mostly. But sometimes the bus can be the only thing that goes that way. Even if it's only moving one space, there's only the bus line, even if they're adjacent. So like, okay, well then that means if they're using a taxi, they can't go that way. So they have little moments that you can kind of be more strategic with it, which is cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think like we had mentioned like the satisfaction of the hider knowing more information than the others, and I think the inverse of the seekers really has to be like a feeling that you can deduce where they are.
Right. Yeah.
And I think like there's a lot more games that came after this that maybe got a little better about being able to feel like you can actually deduce things. Because at some point towards the end, I was like, "Oh man, this is really just a shot in the dark." Now that Trevor got all over,
And they
the
were
place.
so close.
Yeah, and we
Ah.
turns out you were right next to us. But,
Charlie actually went to the space I was gonna go on my last turn,
yeah,
which was like, oh shoot.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is, well, comparing it to games that came after. One thing you see in games that come after is like some of them have a combat system where when you find them, you have to fight them. In which case, it's making it difficult to find them is less important in that case because they have a way to defend themselves. But in this game, if you find Mr. X, he's dead.
Well, and the direct derivative of this game, I would say, is Letters from Whitechapel. And I don't think Ananda, you said you didn't play that one, right?
I haven't played that one.
But basically, it's a very similar thing, except you're chasing Jack the Ripper specifically. And he does have special movement that he reveals to the group as well. And so, it's like, oh, he just used a carriage, so we know he was trapped somewhere and he had to get through the investigators somehow. And that was how you could actually do it, is by using your special cards. But yeah, it's
because you can't actually move through the investigators in that version. Yeah.
Right.
And I was just thinking about Letters from Whitechapel too, because I was remembering that, the way you find out where Jack the Ripper is another
murder.
Victim gets killed.
Yeah,
Whereas,
which makes you feel real bad.
Yeah, which in this one the reveal is pretty random.
Yeah,
there's nothing
it's just a round
thematic about
counter.
it. It's just
Yeah.
okay, on this turn,
he was caught on
pops up.
CCTV.
Yeah, but I actually do like that, and I think that is my takeaway of this planned out reveal. Of a thing, because I think a lot now about reveals in games and how exciting they are for everybody, whether that's card reveal that everyone's like, oh, I'm so excited to learn about this information.
Oh yeah.
And then this one, it's really fun for both sides because as the hidden mover, you can be like, ha, I fooled you, I got way over here and now I get to show off.
Right.
Whereas if you were just hiding the whole time, you don't get that show off moment.
Right.
So, yeah, and honestly, it raises the tension even if you did get away. It's like, okay, well now they know where I am, and they could easily form a little net around me and come at me. It's like, oh god.
And for the detectives, it's also a highlight because that's when you get your information.
Yeah.
Those turns are, you definitely do look forward to those turns.
Yeah.
Because that's okay. That's when I'm going to get some actual intel that I can use.
Well, and it can also tell you how you did at your deducting the information before, deducing. Deducting. It's really, it's really fascinating because I was originally in a lower part of the map and everyone caught up to me very quickly, and I'm like, I don't think I can get out of this. I think I'm trapped. Then I found just one little escape route, and I'm like, okay, great. And then I got to the end of it, and then I had to reveal. I'm like, oh god, that would have been real bad if I was in the downtown and that happened.
Well, and we didn't talk about the first game,
Yeah, we didn't.
which maybe we shouldn't because it's embarrassing.
That's
but
fine.
no,
not like it's
I was the
deducting or
hidden
anything.
mover, and I think you guys found me within 4 moves.
Yeah.
I just landed on. I was trying to do I was trying to do the obvious route, thinking that's too obvious.
Yeah.
Charlie would never do this. And then I was like, wait, no, that was actually
It was just
the
the most
most convenient route for you guys to
Yeah.
go on. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it does feel like a game that could last about 2 minutes, or our second game was 20 minutes,
Oh,
maybe
Was it?
30 minutes.
30 to 40, I think.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it sort of feels like a series of rounds almost. Because we're sort of closing the net, but then we have to move out and.
Well, and just having those small variable powers as the hidden mover, I can act twice in a row is huge, even though I still, move down on my list and get closer to revealing myself.
Yeah.
Just being able to get out of dodge, get along a thing, and then having my hidden or wild actions, I'll say, or wild moves is great because it's like, okay, you don't know what I just did, and I was just on a space that you saw that was every possible movement type.
Yeah.
And so, that makes, okay, great. That means I have no idea what I did. I have unlimited potential for what I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, helps you mask pretty well.
I guess one thing we haven't talked about is the components, specifically
Sure.
the detective tokens. The cool thing, I mean, this is just a pretty cool thing about them. They're these little cone-shaped things,
Yeah.
and the bottom of the cone is clear plastic, so you can see what's underneath it. So you can put them on these numbered spaces and still see the numbered spaces.
Yeah.
And it works really well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm surprised I haven't seen that more, and I've seen people try to
It-
use like tiddlywinks and things. And that's too opaque. Like you can't tell what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was cool too. And I was trying to think of like a game that would justify having that clear plastic thing, and I was thinking like if they were UFOs or
Oh.
like little clear plastic.
Well, even just any game that has a track, if you're using those as markers
Oh,
on the
sure.
track,
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
that's going to be...
And if they
Yeah.
could stack a little bit better, then it'd be perfect.
I don't think they're supposed to stack.
Those
You're-
ones aren't, but
you-
like,
yeah.
if you're on a track, then you can just like stack up on top of each other,
Right.
Then go to a new space. You can all see what you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty chill. So I'll go into my takeaway. I think my biggest takeaway from this is for hidden movement games, you really want to give the hidden mover options that feel pretty flexible, but are actually in a pretty strict, almost gridded system or guided system. Because like once I start going into taxis, yeah, I can get lost in those neighborhoods pretty well. But if I want to use a bus or an underground again, I have to taxi back to a space that has those things. And so you could just go to those spaces first and kind of guard them. And so having that kind of strategic moment where it's like, okay, I could really try and lose them over here and then get to another bus station and then take that bus station away is a really fun little conversation in the mechanics. I really like that.
Yeah. I think my takeaway is that you shouldn't be afraid to write things down as part of the game. I feel like modern games, a lot of them try to replace anything that's even vaguely like a consumable component, but
Yeah.
in particular, paper and pens with cards or tokens or whatever. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have people write stuff down. And in fact,
Yeah.
you can also use erasable markers, which are slightly less consumable than
Yeah.
paper. But even paper, I think, is fine.
Yeah.
Obviously, not all modern games are like that, but I think there are a lot of games that use a bunch of tokens or cards when they could just be writing things down on paper.
Yeah, it does kind of make it more fiddly when you have all those extra components trying to denote all these extra things. And if you could just write it down and you don't need it for anything,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I remember being concerned about that working with a publisher, and I was like, well, if they're scoring, we have to have a score pad, right? And then, that might be too expensive. And she just said, like, I mean, everyone has paper and pen. Like, yeah, that's true. I don't know why I'm being so worried about this as a component.
It's not like you're asking for, a custom D10 or something like that,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of it might be, I mean, I guess I've felt like this at times. It might just be a sort of certain type of perfectionism where you don't want to have to consume anything
Right.
for
Sure.
your game to work. You want to be able to reuse everything. And
Well, and there is something to be said with, wanting the game to have everything you need in the box. A lot
Yeah.
of people say that on all the like Facebook groups and things, like having everything you need in the box is really good.
Including the baseball cap that you need
Including
to
the
cover your
baseball
eyes.
cap to cover your eyes. No, not a screen, not a player screen, not your own individual map,
Yeah.
but a baseball cap.
But
so
that's a mini takeaway for me too. Of like nowadays, I mean, that's so social media friendly too to have a hat. Like they weren't even. This
Oh, yeah.
came out in the era of like, I don't know.
Maybe email. Not even email.
No,
though.
no.
Well, was it 83 you said?
83.
Oh, yeah, no.
I don't know if the original one had a hat in it.
Oh,
to be
that's
fair,
fair.
this
So,
is
sure.
a more recent
Deluxe.
Use your
reprinting.
hand to cover your eyes as you look around the board.
Yep.
There's also something to be said. My mini takeaway with the component thing: if you have writing in a game,
too many takeaways.
No, okay, this isn't a takeaway. This isn't a takeaway. This is just a thought.
Yeah.
But if you have writing in a game, I do think from like a publishing perspective and maybe from a consumer perspective that it can decrease the perceived value of the game. And so if it's $100 game and you have to use your own paper to write out your score, then maybe people would be a little bit more frustrated about something like that versus a $30 game or a $20 game.
Yeah, but if you're replacing a bunch of components with paper, maybe it doesn't have to be a $100 game.
There's that too. But yeah, so it depends on where you end up in that whole sliding scale, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I got.
All right. That's great. I'm excited for more hidden movement games.
That's really
Coming up soon.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.